What if I told you that the most profound and damaging form of loneliness isn't the one that happens in an empty room, but the one that blooms, viciously and silently, in the middle of a crowded party? This is the darkest, most misunderstood psychological trap of the human experience. And within the next minutes, you will not only recognize its face in the mirror, but understand the exact, science-backed mechanisms that keep you imprisoned within it. By the end of this, you will possess the first key to a cage you might not have even known you were in, and the unsettling realization that the door was never truly locked. Imagine this scene, a story I want you to visualize because you've lived it. It's a Friday night. The room is thick with noise, laughter clattering against the walls, the rhythmic pulse of music vibrating through the floor, a kaleidoscope of faces animated in conversation. And there you are, a drink in your hand, a practiced smile on your face, nodding along to a story you're not really hearing. Your body is present, a statue in the Museum of Social Interaction. But the real you, the conscious you, is floating somewhere near the ceiling, looking down. You watch the groups, the easy touches on the arm, the bursts of shared laughter that seem to create invisible, impenetrable force fields around people. You try to tune in, to find a thread to pull, but it's like trying to grab smoke. Your mind is a frantic, silent commentator. What should I say next? Do I look engaged? That joke fell flat. They're just being polite. I'm an intruder here. This is the great paradox, the psychological civil war. Being surrounded by humanity, yet feeling more alien than if you were on the moon. This isn't just shyness. This is a profound disconnection, a splintering of the self from the social world. And your brain, in its desperate attempt to protect you, has become your own warden. This experience has a name in the cold, hard language of science. It's called cognitive disassociation in social contexts. It's a survival mechanism. When the brain is overwhelmed by social stimuli, it perceives as threatening or unnavigable. It literally checks out. It partitions the part of you that is performing from the part of you that is observing and judging. Studies using fMRI scanners show that during perceived social exclusion, the brain's dorsal anterior cingulate cortex and the anterior insula light up, the exact same neural pathways that process physical pain. So when you say it hurts to feel left out, you are not being metaphorical. You are describing a biological reality. Your brain interprets social isolation as a direct threat to survival, a relic from our tribal past, where banishment was a death sentence. But here's the cruel modern twist. The brain can't tell the difference between being physically alone and feeling psychologically alone in a group. So it activates the same alarm system. This is the shocking truth. That ache you feel in your chest at a party isn't weakness. It's a primal, neurological fire alarm blaring in a building that everyone else insists isn't on fire.
This creates a devastating feedback loop known as social threat vigilance. Imagine a soldier who has been in a war zone for too long. They come home, and the sound of a car backfiring doesn't just startle them, it triggers a full-body panic response. Their system is hyper-attuned to danger. For you, the war zone was likely a series of smaller, cumulative rejections. The childhood friend who suddenly found a cooler group, the conversation that died when you joined it, the birthday you hoped people would remember that they forgot. Your brain, to protect you from future pain, now scans every social environment for the slightest hint of threat. You become a master of micro-expressions, reading subtle shifts in posture, tone, and gaze. A delayed text reply isn't just a busy person, it's proof of your dwindling social value. A glance away during your story isn't a distraction, it's a silent critique. This isn't paranoia, it's a learned psychological adaptation. A famous study from the University of Chicago demonstrated that people with high levels of loneliness are significantly better at accurately identifying facial expressions of rejection and anger, but at a terrible cost. They also become more likely to perceive these negative emotions in neutral faces. Your greatest strength, your sensitivity, has been weaponized against you by your own mind, creating a world where you are perpetually on the verge of being exiled. Let me tell you a story about a man named David, a case study that has haunted me for years. David was a successful software architect, sharp, logical, and by all accounts competent. He worked in an open-plan office, surrounded by dozens of colleagues. Every day, he'd engage in the usual pleasantries, attend meetings where he'd contribute ideas, and even join the team for lunch. From the outside, he was integrated. But David felt like a ghost. He described sitting in a brainstorming session, watching ideas bounce around the room like a pinball. He'd have a thought, but by the time he'd run it through his internal filter, is this valuable? Is this stupid? Will I be interrupting? The moment had passed. The conversation would flow around him, and he'd feel the invisible wall solidify. He started eating lunch at his desk, telling himself he was being productive. The invitations slowly dried up. His brain had learned that the risk of saying the wrong thing, of feeling that sharp sting of irrelevance, was greater than the potential reward of connection. He wasn't choosing isolation. He was succumbing to a psychological principle called learned social helplessness. After enough perceived failures, the brain concludes that effort is futile. It stops trying. David's story isn't one of misanthropy. It's a tragedy of a mind that cared too much, that tried too hard to get it right, and eventually, to save itself from the pain of failed attempts, simply gave up. The silence of his apartment, he told me, was at least a predictable silence, unlike the chaotic, judgmental silence he felt in a room full of people.
But what is the origin of this relentless inner critic? Why does one person leave a party thinking, "What a great night," while you leave with a detailed inventory of every slightly awkward thing you said? The answer often lies not in the present, but buried in the past, in the very architecture of your attachment style. If you had a childhood where your caregivers were inconsistent, sometimes nurturing, sometimes distant or critical, your brain had to become hyper-vigilant to their emotional states to secure the love and safety you needed. You learned that connection was conditional. You had to be a certain way to be loved. This wiring, formed for survival, doesn't just switch off when you become an adult. It gets projected onto every social interaction. You walk into a room feeling deep in your subconscious that you must earn your place, that you are perpetually on probation. This is the black pill of psychology, the realization that the game was rigged before you even knew you were playing. The joy of spontaneous, unconditional connection feels like a myth because your entire nervous system was built on a foundation of conditions. The warmth you see others so easily exchange feels like a foreign language you can't quite master, no matter how hard you study the grammar. This is where we must make a crucial and perhaps shocking distinction. There is a world of difference between solitude and loneliness. Solitude is chosen. It is the quiet room where an artist loses themselves in creation, the peaceful walk where you process your thoughts. It is a state of fullness. Loneliness, especially the kind felt in a crowd, is forced. It is a state of lack, of hunger. It is the silence that screams. One of the most insidious psychological tricks this form of loneliness plays is convincing you that you prefer the solitude. You tell yourself, "I'm an introvert," or "people are exhausting." And while that might be partially true, it often masks a deeper, more painful truth. You have given up. You have surrendered to the self-fulfilling prophecy of rejection. You believe you will be rejected, so you act in ways that are guarded, distant, or overly accommodating, behaviors that actually elicit the very rejection you feared. A groundbreaking study published in the journal Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin found that individuals who expected to be rejected were perceived as less likable by others after just a few minutes of interaction. Their expectation created their reality. Your fear of being unseen becomes the very thing that makes you invisible. This is the psychological cage. The bars are made of your own predictions.
So, where does this leave us? Is this a life sentence? A predetermined outcome of neural pathways and childhood scripts? Absolutely not. The very fact that you feel this pain so acutely is not your flaw. It is your proof. It is proof of your innate biological need for connection, a need that has simply been twisted and suppressed. It is evidence of a deep sensitivity that, once understood and redirected, can become your greatest asset. The numbness you feel isn't the absence of feeling, but the overwhelm of it. Your system has shut down to survive the constant bombardment of perceived social threats. But the human brain is not a stone tablet. It is soft clay. It is capable of change, of what neuroscientists call neuroplasticity. The pathways that scream danger can be quieted. The patterns that lead you to the ceiling, observing your own life, can be broken. The first, most critical step is not to force yourself into more crowds. It is to perform a radical act of psychological archaeology, to go back into the quiet and uncover why your mind built these fortresses in the first place. This journey requires us to go to a darker, more foundational place. We've identified the problem, the mechanics of the trap. But to truly disarm it, we must expose its root. In the next part, we will descend into the core wound. We will explore the specific, often hidden childhood and adolescent experiences that program this feeling of otherness into your very operating system. We will examine the concept of the false self, the mask you created to survive that has now become your prison. And I will share the unsettling story of a woman named Elena, who discovered that the very personality she built to be loved was the very thing preventing it. The path to connection doesn't start with learning better small talk. It starts with a terrifying and liberating demolition of the person you pretend to be. If you're ready to confront the real origin of the ghost in the crowded room, then what comes next is the most important part of your escape.
So we arrive at the core, the origin point of the ghost. To understand why you feel alone in a crowd, we must excavate the very foundation of your social self, a construction that began not in a boardroom or at a party, but in the quiet, formative moments of your earliest years. This is where the blueprint for your isolation was drafted, not out of malice, but as a desperate, ingenious strategy for survival. Imagine a child, let's call him Leo. Leo is sensitive. He feels the emotional weather in his home with the intensity of a barometer. When he is joyful and loud, his father, tired from work, tells him to be quiet, that he's too much. When he is sad and cries, his mother, overwhelmed herself, tells him to cheer up, that he's being dramatic. In these moments, a devastatingly brilliant calculation is made in Leo's young mind. To receive love and safety, certain parts of himself must be hidden. His full, authentic self is deemed unacceptable. So he learns to compartmentalize. The loud, exuberant Leo is locked away. The sad, vulnerable Leo is silenced. What remains is a polished, manageable version, a false self that says the right things, doesn't cause trouble, and seeks, above all else, to avoid the terrifying withdrawal of affection. This false self is your first and most ingenious mask, carved not from vanity, but from the primal need to belong. And the tragedy is that it works. You get the conditional love you bargained for, but the cost is catastrophic. You become a stranger to yourself, and the authentic you, the one buried alive, begins to scream in the silence of your own isolation. This is the shocking truth. The loneliness you feel in a crowd isn't because people don't know you. It's because you don't know you. You have abandoned yourself, and you are haunting your own life, watching a performance of a person you were never meant to be. This false self doesn't disappear with childhood. It goes to college, it enters your career, it attends parties. It is the persona that laughs at the right time, holds opinions that are socially safe, and molds itself to fit the expectations of whoever's in the room. But this performance is psychically exhausting. It requires constant monitoring and energy, which is why social situations feel so draining. You're not just socializing, you're running a complex psychological operation, managing the mask and ensuring it never slips. And beneath the mask, the buried authentic self, the one with its own weird hobbies, its unconventional thoughts, its raw and unfiltered emotions, grows increasingly lonely. This is the internal schism. The you performing for the world, and the real you, watching from the inside, feeling more disconnected with every passing year. A profound study on self-concept clarity shows that individuals with a weak sense of their true self report significantly higher levels of loneliness and social anxiety, regardless of their number of friends. The problem isn't the crowd, it's the chasm between the performer on the stage and the soul watching from the wings. Every time you choose the mask, you betray the authentic self, reinforcing its conviction that it is unlovable and must remain in hiding. This is the cruel, self-perpetuating cycle. You wear a mask to be loved, but the act of wearing it prevents you from ever being loved for who you truly are.
Let me tell you the story of Elena, a story that illustrates this prison with heartbreaking clarity. Elena was universally described as the kindest, most accommodating person you could ever meet. She was a social chameleon, effortlessly blending into any group. At work, she was the diligent, quiet worker. With her book club, she was the thoughtful listener. She was so good at reflecting others, at being what they needed, that she never made a ripple. And she was utterly, devastatingly lonely. In therapy, she described a recurring dream where she was a glass woman, perfectly transparent. People would look right through her, talking to their own reflections on her surface, never seeing the person trapped inside. Elena's false self was built on a foundation of kindness, but it was a kindness born of fear. The fear of conflict, the fear of being a burden, the fear of taking up space. Her authentic self was fiery, opinionated, and passionately creative. But as a child, her fiery emotions were dismissed as dramatic, and her creativity was seen as an impractical distraction. So she buried that girl and became a ghost of agreeability. The shock of her realization wasn't that people didn't love her, it was that she had never given them anything real to love. She was offering a mirror and then feeling hurt that no one was looking for her behind the glass. Her journey out of loneliness didn't start with making more friends. It started with the terrifying, deliberate act of disappointing people. It started with saying a small, firm no to a request that inconvenienced her. It started with voicing a contrary opinion in a meeting, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. Each time she did this, she expected the world to end, for people to abandon her. Instead, something else happened. Some people were taken aback, yes, but others leaned in. They saw a flicker of something real behind the glass, and they were intrigued. For the first time, people were not connecting with her pleasant reflection, but with her messy, authentic humanity. This is the pivotal shift, the moment where the black pill psychologist offers not despair, but a path forged in brutal self-honesty. The way out of this labyrinth is not to find the perfect crowd to fit into, but to dismantle the false self brick by brick, and to stage what I call the return of the exiled self. This is not an act of joy, but of profound and necessary grief. It is a funeral for the person you thought you had to be. You must grieve the perfect, likable, seamless persona you constructed. You must mourn the time lost, the relationships built on a lie, the life not lived. This grief is not a setback. It is the fuel for your liberation. As you grieve the false self, you begin to extend curiosity, not judgment, towards the parts of you that you buried. That weird hobby you're embarrassed by? That's a fragment of your soul. That anger you're afraid to feel? That's a boundary waiting to be drawn. That unconventional idea? That's your unique intelligence trying to breathe. Reintegrating these parts is a slow, deliberate process of saying, "You are welcome here." This is the ultimate act of self-help, to end the civil war within your own psyche.
The practical application of this is where inspiration must meet the grim reality of the work. You don't need to make a grand announcement. You start in the smallest, safest possible ways. You start by stating a simple preference. I'd rather see the action movie than the comedy. You start by wearing the shirt you like, but think might be too much. You start by allowing a moment of silence in a conversation instead of rushing to fill it with pleasantries. Each of these tiny acts is a message to your subconscious. I am taking up space. I am real. The brain's neuroplasticity ensures that with enough repetition, these new behaviors forge new pathways. The amygdala's alarm bell for social threat begins to quieten, not through force, but through the slow, consistent proof that being authentic does not lead to death, but to a more resonant life. The research on this is clear. Practices that increase self-awareness and self-acceptance, like mindfulness and journaling, physically reduce the density of neural connections in the brain's fear center and strengthen the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for rational thought and emotional regulation. You are not just healing your heart, you are rewiring your biology. This journey will change the kind of connections you form. When you operate from your false self, you attract users, mirrors, and people who love the hollow echo you provide. When you begin to show up as your authentic, imperfect self, you will repel those people, and that will feel like loss. But you will begin to attract a different caliber of human, the curious, the deep, the real. These connections will feel different. They won't be as intense or instantly intimate, because they are not built on the frantic energy of performance and need. They will be slower, quieter, more solid. They will be based on mutual recognition, not mutual use. This is the final, inspirational truth. Your loneliness was never a curse. It was a compass. It was the persistent, aching signal that you were off your true path, that you were living a life that was not your own. The feeling of being alone in the crowd was the most accurate feedback mechanism you possessed, screaming that the persona you offered to the world was incompatible with the soul it was meant to represent. So, the next time you find yourself in a crowded room, feeling the familiar pull to float towards the ceiling, I want you to do one thing. Ground yourself. Feel your feet on the floor. Take one breath for you and you alone. And instead of asking, how can I get these people to like me? I want you to ask the most subversive, the most powerful question you will ever ask yourself in a social situation. Who am I right now, in this moment? And what would that person genuinely like to say or do? The answer might be to leave.
It might be to go talk to the one other person who looks as uncomfortable as you feel. It might be to stop smiling and just listen. It doesn't matter. The victory is not in the outcome. The victory is in the internal act of consulting your own soul. You are no longer a ghost. You are becoming real. And the world, for all its noise and chaos, has a mysterious way of welcoming what is real. Your loneliness was the seed. Your authenticity is the bloom. The bridge you have been searching for your entire life was never out there in the crowd. It was the courageous, quiet, and relentless act of building it, step by step, from the exiled parts of yourself back to the center of your own being. Welcome home.